I love the opening range breakout strategy for its simplicity and really kind of brainless mechanics. No offense, but one of my ideas behind this and really goals in working on this strategy was to automate it. So I can be worrying about other trading in the morning session and let the opening range breakout take care of itself. So I created an indicator where I could look really quickly at the opening range and the targets that I like to look at. And I use this for back testing and for trading. It's pretty simple. There's lots of free versions out there. Mine's called the ORB Wrangler. It's on bullbarbie.com. But this video is really about the automation that's based off of my strategy. And I'm going to show you that today. I'm going to introduce you to what we are now calling ORBie. That's the ORB bot that trades my ORB strategy. I am planning to continue developing it and making it even better. This is the most basic version that'll trade my strategy. So I'm going to show you on the ORB Wrangler basically what my strategy is. Okay, so over here on NinjaTrader, this is an ES futures chart. It's a 5-minute chart, and I have my opening range breakout set to 15 minutes. So it's just getting the high and the low of the first 15 minutes. And then we're doing a calculation to get half of that distance, that full distance, 1.5 of that distance to each side. The way that I trade this is once we get a break, and it doesn't have to be a candle close, I enter. I usually just have an order sitting there waiting for me so that I can go ahead and have my eyes focus on an order flow chart or whatever other chart is catching my interest at the time, and just let this trade happen. So once I'm in, I set a stop loss on the other side of the opening range, and I aim for a 1-to-1. So on this second line here. And once the trade goes to half of that distance, I trail to break even. There's a lot of different ways that you can trade this. And if you are more comfortable with a different way, or in your back testing, you come up with an idea that's better, that's great. But what I was doing was basing it on the trade that I'm comfortable with and putting those inputs in there. I've made it customizable so that you can modify these things. And I plan on adding more customizations later, especially based on y'all's feedback. But let me go ahead and show you what we're working with. And first of all, if you've never loaded a strategy before, that's what the bots are called in NinjaTrader. You'll go to Tools, Import, and then NinjaScript add-on. Go to the zip file and you'll import it there, and then you'll be able to load strategies. And there's 2 different ways that you can load strategies, and ORBie works both of these ways. There's one extra feature if you add it to a chart instead of to your strategy window, but I'll show you real quick. If you've never done this before, you can right click on your strategy window and go to New Strategy, and then we'll have various ones listed here. The one that I'm going to go to is the ORBie bot. And you can see those settings here, and I'm going to go through all of these in more detail, but I want to show you also how you can add it to your chart, because you'll get kind of some extra things. So on your chart, you have a little icon up here that looks like a clipboard. When you hover over it, it says strategies. If you click that, you can load a strategy to a chart. So it's the same window that you saw before. I think there's a lot more chaos in there, but I got a lot of projects going. Ignore those for now. Shh. Okay, ORBie. We'll look at those settings right here. Okay, so let's talk about it. The most important thing to look at, and it's down here, so pay attention, is the opening range start hour. I have it set to 9 o'clock because I know that y'all love to base everything on the New York Open. I'm in Central Time, so if I'm going to base this on the New York Open, I need to change this to 8. And then underneath that, that's the start minute, so that'll be 8:30. The opening range duration is how long of an opening range we want to look for. So you can set this to a 5-minute or a 30-minute, whatever you want to do. It is in minutes, so it's not made to go smaller than that. So I'm going to leave that on 15 for now, and I'm going to move back up to the top. We'll kind of start from there. So this stands for Don't Be a Dick for a Tick offset. That basically means if we've got a real hard level here, and these are calculated, and okay, these are rounded, so I'm going to look at these lower ones for simplicity, but this first target down here was 𝗖𝗱𝗁, if instead of nailing that exactly so I can make sure that this order gets hit more times than not, I can offset that just inside of that. So on ES, 1 tick might work great. So that would have been at 66.61.5. And that order would have had better chances of getting filled at that level just inside of that level. Do you see what I mean? If you're trading NASDAQ, you might need to up that a little bit. A lot of times, times 4, times 5, something like that can kind of equal some of these ES moves. You can play with that yourself, but since that's how I actually trade this strategy as well as a lot of my others, I have that programmed into my strategy. So the other thing that you can do is wait for the entry offset. And what I'm looking at here is sometimes we'll have this little break and it just breaks by a tick or two. And maybe we don't want to get tagged in when it's just a tick or two like that. So that's what this entry offset is. If you want to wait until we're 1 tick or 2 ticks or 3 ticks outside of that opening range, then that's where you can set that. If you are really feeling like, man, this market is really probably going to launch, I don't want to get stuck in any shorts today, you can turn the shorts off. Or if, man, we've been really running hard, we're super extended, I don't want to be chancing any longs at resistance here, then you can leave shorts on and turn longs off. By default, both of those are on. This is where it gets kind of more interesting and you can program the different risks, because I don't like doing this calculation live, especially when I want the orb to kind of be running in the background while I'm watching some other strategies like the Stampede or, really anything else that I'm looking at. So this is going to go ahead and do that math for me. I can set my max risk in dollars, and so that's currency. Mine's in US dollars, so I can set this to $500 by default. If you're running this in a prop, you're probably going to be running this in micros if you're using futures anyway, right? So there's not going to be a lot of room to enter. You're going to miss a lot of these if you have a lower max risk and you're trying to run these on minis. So don't be afraid to run micros on this to make this work, because the way that I like to run it is I'll have a max risk. Maybe it's $500, maybe it's $200, maybe it's $100, whatever it is, I can set that max risk. And then the strategy is going to do a calculation based on how wide that range is, how many entries it can take, what the max quantity of position to stay within this risk parameter is. If it's 0, it should not enter the trade. So the max quantity I have is 5, because at a point that starts to feel like more risk than I want to take, I can cap the entry to only take a certain amount of risk. So then the max daily entries is how many times you're going to let it re-enter. And we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail, but what that means is, let's say you enter on this short because we got the break, and then the way that I do this is when we get halfway to the target, I trail my stop from way back here all the way up to break even. So in this case, it was a stop out. So am I done for the day? I don't like to play that way. I like to keep my options open. A lot of the times, the second or third break is really that true one. And, when you've been given the opportunity to move your stop to break even and scratch out and then get a re-entry, that can sometimes be a good sign. So that's what this is. It's how many times are you going to let it re-enter before you're like, screw it, this is just way too choppy of a day. So that'll go back to your max risk. You're going to multiply this max risk by max daily entries to get your worst case scenario. Now, keep in mind, it can actually be multiplied if you have a glitch with any of your accounts or with the strategy itself. So you really should babysit this. Don't plan on just completely ignoring this. You should still at least have alerts on when you have anything like this going. And on that note, I'll stop right here, and I'm probably going to lecture you this a little bit later too. I really ask that whenever you're running any of these strategies, especially mine, you test this in paper for at least 2 weeks so you guys can get to know each other. If you're going to have a lifetime of profits together, let's take each other out for drinks first so that you can get comfortable with an auto trader trading your accounts, so you can get comfortable with the different behaviors and expectations for what's going to happen. Because even if you're not feeling it, this thing's going to trade, and that can be good good or that can be bad. It kind of depends. You kind of have to get used to that. These algos are not, and these strategies, they're not like black boxes that are magically going to make the strategy work every time. They're just going to trade it every time. Okay, this is not a guarantee of money. It's just a way to make your life a little bit easier if you're comfortable running this. Okay, so back to that note, if you kind of decide what your worst case scenario is, that will help you figure out what your max daily entry and your max risk is. But also keep in mind how many times you're okay with letting it break. Because today, this is before FOMC, so it was kind of prone to be a more choppy day. But sometimes we can still get these moves. How do you want to protect your account when you're really not sure? All right, so on the Orb Wrangler, we have something called hang time, and that's how long these lines will display. And my idea behind that is I'm really probably only going to look for entries for this in the morning session. Maybe I'll look for them all day, but a lot of the times I just want to focus my efforts on the morning session. So I can set these lines to just turn off and stop displaying, and that's my cue to stop trying to mess with my orb strategy. In this case, it's less about the lines displaying, because the Orb Wrangler is a separate thing. That's an indicator. This is a strategy. What I'm showing you right now is the settings for just the strategy, just demonstrating what I'm talking about with the Orb Wrangler indicator. So be sure you understand these are two separate things. But anyway, I just want to make that distinction that if you have the Orb Wrangler, we have the hang time that tells these lines to go hit the hay. In the ORBie bot, we have quitting time actually. And what this is how long before the bot's going to, there it is, it's going to stop. So if you want the trade only to work during the New York session or something like that, then you can set that time right there, or you can let it run over some different periods if you want to. So here's the other thing where I was mentioning show orb lines, and I want to make the distinction between the indicator here, the Orb Wrangler indicator, and the ORBie bot. So I'm going to go ahead and hit apply on this so you can see what I'm talking about. I just got myself really confused, but that's because I'm recording this at the end of the day, so I had to make some settings wonky, so just ignore the settings that I changed for a second. Because what I wanted to show you is if you have show orb lines checked, what that's going to do is add the pink and blue lines, and I made them a different color just so they're easy to distinguish from the indicator, because you can run this together or separately. So if you just want the ORBie on your chart, you can certainly do that. Okay, the next checkbox we have is this do not re-enter on exit candle. And what that means is, do you want to wait until the next candle to re-enter? Sometimes we'll have the market move down and then stop us out at break even and then wick back real quick because we have that stop at break even, but we're still hitting the criteria for the trade, which is crossing this line. So one way to keep the thing from, switching in and out and, re-entering before you're ready when the market's still being really volatile is to wait for a new candle. This is kind of weird. This is just the way Ninja math works, at least from my understanding. But if you have the opening range duration set to 15, for example, you need to make sure that this minute is that your duration is divisible by the minute chart that you're looking at. So 15 divided by 3 is 5. It's divisible by 3, right? It goes into 15 evenly. If you don't have that set, it can glitch because it's going to start messing with charts that don't exist. So you need to pay attention to that. On the 15-minute chart, the 3-minute seems to work well. The 1 minute's not bad either. You'll kind of just have to play with that. Again, that's why I encourage you to get to know each other, take each out for drinks, take each other out for queso, get to know each other, Netflix and chill a little bit before you go making any commitments in accounts and spending real money on her. Okay, so that's another thing that you need to pay attention to. But that's what, if you are waiting to re-enter on the next candle, that's what you're wanting to make. You need to control which candle that is. On that note, once you load this to your chart, if you go change the time frame of the chart, the strategy is going to reset. So that means if you have your max daily entries set, or it's already placed a trade, it's going to screw up some of this math, right? Because now we've already got one of those trades off, but the strategy's reset and thinks it still has 3. So if you add this to a chart, I encourage you to not mess with your time frame and just leave it there. Sometimes the way that I'll handle that is I'll just have it on one of these tabs. I'll rename a tab, the ORB tab, you know, the MES ORB or the MNQ ORB, and I'll just leave it there because then I know I shouldn't mess with that chart. Okay, it's late in the day, so this is a little bit weird, but the way I had the settings set up to make these lines appear, we went ahead and entered a trade. And so I'm going to leave this up for a second so you can see what it looks like with that "don't be a dick for a tick" offset on there, and how I put it just on the, you know, the inside of or outside of that line, depending on if it's the profit or the stop loss. So that's how I handle that there. This was based on one of the re-entries. So let me show you what that looks like. If you have a situation where the bot trails to break even and then stops out right, you know, here at this spot, this is also the entry. So the bot can get kind of confused on what it's supposed to do at a spot like this. So that's what I have this checkbox here for. It says do not re-enter on candle close. This is basically asking, do you want to wait for the next candle to re-enter if you stop out? I like it there. And this is going to be based on the time frame that the chart is on. And on that note, once you set the time frame for this, you need to leave it alone. Look, it trailed right there. So you'll get to kind of see a cool example of this working, even though this is a weird trade right now. But once you have your strategy set to a chart, you should really leave the chart alone and not be changing the time frame. If you change the time frame, it changes the setup of these rules. So it's going to reset the strategy. If it's already been in a trade, then your max daily entries is going to get messed up because it's not going to count those. It's going to be reset. So what I do is I have a tab that's just for the ORB, and I have it renamed to ORB MES, ORB MNQ, whatever it is that I'm looking at. So that way I know to just let those charts go and not mess with them, because you're not going to be able to move these take profits and stop losses, not just because I'm in the settings right now, but because the strategy is always going to take over. Every time the price moves, it's going to take back over for you. So it's not going to work. So anyway, that's what all of those main settings are. You need to make sure you put this in the right account, and you're going to run it in sim for 2 weeks. And I'm going to take care of you on that. So your trial is going to cover the 2 weeks to run it in sim, and then an opportunity to run it live if you want to see if you can, how you can do on it. So I'm gonna absolutely take care of you on that. Your trial is going to cover what you need to run it on sim. I also encourage you to do all your own back testing to get really comfortable with how these are. If you do the NinjaTrader back testing, it's going to give you some weird entries. There's different ways that you can make it more reliable, but the best way to get the quickest back test, and this is not going to be quick, is running everything through Market Replay. So download the tick data and run it in Market Replay, maybe backtest a week at a time after work, you know, whatever it is, and really get a feel for how this works before you try messing with it anywhere else. Please, 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 please. Okay, so we're running it on sim. You can call it whatever you want. I have it wait until flat. I don't have anything else on these accounts. You know, I can put like an MNQ and an MES in the same account, but I'm not going to run other things that would conflict and potentially be trading those same assets in that account, or everything's going to get kind of weird. Once you have everything the way you want it, then you can hit enabled here, and then I'll hit OK to get it out of the way. It's trying to catch up right now, so don't worry about that right now. I just turned that off so I don't get too distracted here. But the other thing that I wanted to show you is back on the strategies tab, you can quickly enable or disable strategies from there as well. If you have it added to a chart, you're going to see those lines. If you just added it by right-clicking and adding the strategy this way, when you enable it, the lines are not going to show up there because it's running kind of in the back end instead of on a chart. If you add it to the chart, it's attached to the chart. If you add it in the strategies windows, it is not attached to a chart. It's a good practice to, make sure that your bots are disabled at the end of the day and make sure that you don't have any weird phantom positions. I can't promise that there won't be some sort of glitch. Glitches still happen in automated trade strategies. So of course the ORBie is not a guarantee of profit. We're using back testing results, so the profits are hypothetical. And you do have to still monitor and pay attention to these. If you exit a position manually, it will also reset the strategy. So if it's enabled and we end up in a position and I exit that position, it's going to automatically disable that strategy for me. That's why, especially if you're new to this, let this guy run and sim a little bit. Even if you're not new to it, I would still like you guys to get to know each other first. But anyway, so that is how to set up and control the ORBie bot, which is based on my version of the opening range breakout strategy. And it is available on my website at 𝗏𝗏𝗁𝗏𝗏𝗏. There is a membership where you can rent it along with a whole bunch of other indicators and things, or you can buy it as a lifetime license for NinjaTrader. So on that note, I will see you next time. I'll see you around maybe in the Discord, maybe on some lives. Hope to see you soon. Until next time, love you. Bye.